Hey, Tiara. I'm gonna turn the camera on in a minute. I'm just finishing up some things here. Can you hear me good? I'm gonna turn the camera on in a minute. I'm just kind of moving around a little bit. But let me know if you can hear me. If you can put a one in there. Awesome. Okay. So good, 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 good. So yeah, so like I said, I'm just kind of moving around a little bit. I'm gonna turn the camera on in a few minutes. It's been a bit of a busy morning into the afternoon, so I'm still kind of moving. Like I said, just doing a few things. But the topic, your dark, what did I, it's so funny how I can't ever remember the topic of my life. I'm always like, what's the name of it? um yeah, I don't know what that's about. But yeah, basically, I'm always getting into right, I'm always getting into the shadow feminine, right, because that's the root of my work. So that's where everything starts. So I know I put something like your dark feminine, there we, thank you, Tiara, your dark feminine mind, there it is. All right. So yeah, so I wanted to kind of get into that today. I mean, obviously, like I said, that is the root of my work, but I have been watching Power, and I don't know if you've seen that, but the women in the show, they exhibit the dark feminine, the dark matriarchy, right? Um, there's a lot of Masonic, the Ma and Son, which is basically what Mason means. That's like the whole so-called secret of Masonry, that it basically means Ma and Son, right? So I've been watching that show, and it has been really, like, I've learned so much watching that show, and it's so connected to my work, right? So let's see, video time. All right, just got to get the glasses. Okay, so there we go. Power. Um, they call it 50 Cent show. You was fussing at the kid. Know how that go. Yeah, so the show is Power. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's real popular. Yeah, so so I've really been watching that show, and specifically the women on there. They are an excellent, excellent example of, hey, thank you. They're an excellent example of, well, a display of the dark feminine energy, specifically the dark matriarchy, right? Because when we think about matriarchy, we keep hearing a lot of stuff about the matriarchy. And, it's almost like there's this thing around matriarchy that's like, where women are, I don't know, like sisterhood groups, and I don't know whatever it is women think a matriarchy is, it most likely is not what they're thinking it is. The foundation of a matriarchal society, the matriarchal power structure, is the main focus is the children. That's number one. Children are not left alone to fend for themselves and have to raise themselves. We don't throw children out to the wolves under a true matriarchal power structure. The children are the center. However, women are at the head, right? Yeah. And so when women when we truly, truly come together and we're really about doing things the correct way, making things better, just all of those things that we want to do, right? But we also have to understand that within that, the matriarchy also has a darker side to it. For real matriarchy, it's going to include not just life but death. If you watch shows like Dune, um, you'll see somewhat of a matriarchy at play, right? The woman, I cannot remember this woman's name, but she had no problem eliminating the threats. And women, we have become so far removed from who we really are that when we see women do certain things that we would be considered like that's not good or that's bad or evil or whatever, we're just not used to women operating in that way. So when we see women, most of the time when they are operating in that shadow dark feminine, they're doing grimy shit to other women. That energy that you have as the dark feminine, that shadow feminine, you're supposed to learn how to properly integrate that. It's not about just doing grimy shit to other women. Sexual competition, being jealous of your best friend and doing little things to sabotage her relationships or to sabotage whatever she have going on in her life. This is the grimy shit. The jealousies, this is the grimy shit of the shadow feminine, right? And so that's why it's so important that we do that work. That's why it's so important that we dive deep into that abyss and we do that serious like shadow work on ourselves, you know. um so when I talk about your dark feminine, these are the things that I want to get into, and I want to utilize the show Power. And so you have the Power universe. So you have Power, then you have that's Power book 1, then you have Power book 2 Ghost, and then we have Raising Canaan. Now Raquel, or Rock, in Raising Canaan, I love her. Okay, she is that girl, right? And then in Power, the first one, Power, Tasha St. Patrick, and then in the Power book 2, Ghost, we see the character Monet, who's played by Mary J. Blige. Now, I posted recently. I used a image. It's called, I think it's called Mothers of Monsters, and excuse me, and it's those three women that I just spoke of. Now, when we get into matriarchy and then we get into May Sun or Ma and Sun, we see this being played out throughout throughout the series of Power. Like I said, Power Book 2, and also Raising Canaan. Now, I have not started Raising Canaan yet, but I have seen so many reels and I've been going down the rabbit hole and reading about the characters. Um, I have a pretty good hold on Kanan, based on the show Power. But that's when he's older, not old like as an old man, but in Raising Kanan, we're seeing him as a little boy, growing into, a teenager, young man. And then in Raising Kanan, he's a grown ass man, basically. So, but we have an idea as to why he is the way that he is just from watching Power. But when you go back and look at the clips of Raising Canaan, that gives you the foundation of why Canaan is the way he is, why he is the monster that he is, and it's all thanks to his mother. So this is why we're always talking about mothers of sons. That mother and son relationship is very much, and people don't like to hear this, but it really is. There's a mother wound. Just the fact that you're born a male, you have a mother wound. A lot of people don't like that. Some people don't understand that when I say that. But it's the fact that you are born male, you have a mother wound. Because you come here naturally with impediments. The XY chromosome, that Y chromosome is a mutation. So the male already comes here with impediments. Now, obviously, we've seen grown men accomplish astounding things. We know that. So it's not like they can't do it, right? We've seen young men who are genius level intelligence. We know that. I mean, we've seen them. We see them all the time. We hear about them all the time. So, but that doesn't mean that at the cellular level, the foundation of who they are, they do come here with those impediments. I mean, most of your autistic cases are in males. It's a higher percentage in males than it is in females. So they already come here with these impediments. But when they birth their sons, I always say that most women, it don't even matter what ethnicity, nationality, whatever you are, most women, when they birth sons, they act like they birthing the baby Jesus. They have all of these expectations. And when we get into black women tend to think that their sons are going to be like the next Malcolm X or the next whatever, right? And they do such a job of treating their sons like they are the, like I said, they act like their sons are the baby Jesus. And the relationship between the mother and son is so dysfunctional in most, among all ethnicities, I think, nationalities. I think they're all pretty much dysfunctional. But when we're getting into the West, right, that's a whole different mentality when you're dealing about Western culture and Western mentality, right? Hey, Brown Sugar, now that you mentioned the word Ma, it reminded me of Ma'at, ancient Egypt goddess. Yes, absolutely. So Ma, anything Ma, that's the feminine. The Ma is the root word of marriage. And I don't know if you guys attended. I did this like earlier, it might have been last year, I can't remember, but I broke down the numerology of the word marriage and the beginning of that word Ma. So marriage is at its root a feminine principle, but it's not what we see. That's why it's so important to do the etymology and do the numerology on words, because you'll see that ma in marriage simply means that the feminine coming together to create something. Basically, that's what that is. And then of course everything got twisted, and then we start getting the concept of marriage and husbands and all of this, and then it just got all convoluted into meaning something different than what it really is. But the root word of the word marriage is ma. um they fear correct, yeah. So what they want to do is, these women, they use their sons to, they manipulate their sons and get their in their sons ears. They're very inf, blah, influential on their sons. And so they're able to get into their sons ears and manipulate, and as I call it, the mother tongue. And we see it all the time, right? We see how it's, and again, I'm gonna get into black men. We see how the relationship is between black women and their sons. The boy mom, black women in this boy mom shit. I mean, like, forget about it, right? It's so I can't even think of a word right now. It's so like prevalent, and when she has that son, she uses him and manipulates him so she can move around on the chessboard, this game that we call life, right? Now we know in chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board because she's able to move freely around the board, right? But women, they have sons, so they can utilize their sons. Like they want, how can I put, it's like they're the masterminds, right? And they use their sons in order, as a strategy, in order to be able to move around on the board. And this is what we see in power. First of all, I've seen a case where a man married a woman for their mom. Oh my God. See? Yep. So in the case of power, Tasha, once she sees that Tariq is headed down the same path as their father, instead of her instead of her coming together with the father and really putting the hammer down on Tariq, she perpetuates it. She actually starts teaching him the game. Now, when we look at the show and we see that, damn, is this I think this really is Tariq. Just like it was James. It was Ghost. This was who he is. He started out very young in the streets, became a legend. He got the name Ghost. Very strategic, extremely intelligent, very Machiavellian in his movements and everything. That is who he is. And he passed that on to his son. But instead of him being upfront with his son and telling his son, this is really how I was able to get as wealthy as I am. I started out in the game. And he wanted to protect and shield his children from that. And I get that. That's what you want to do as a parent. We all do that, right? Don't we want to shield and protect our children from the hardships of what we had to go through? We want to do that. But I think sometimes we do that to a detriment, because our children need to know certain things. They need to know, okay, this is what I had to do in order to get you to where you are. I had to go do a few things that I'm not necessarily proud of, right? Sometimes you just have to tell children the truth. And we're so scared to tell our children the truth. And that's just because that's an ego thing for us. We don't want them to see us in a different light. But you have no control how your children are going to view you. You have no control over that. You have to you instill certain morals and values and things like that, and help them to, whatever path they're going to be on. But you can't make them see you a certain way. All you can do is show up and do what you're supposed to do for them, but you do need to tell them the truth. So James did not want to just sit Tariq down and just give him the whole thing. This is what I did. This is why I don't want you in this life. I can see where you're going. Blah, whatever the talking points needed to be, he needed to do that. And because he didn't do that, he messed up. That's where he fucked up, because what ended up happening was Tariq ended up having such a resentment and a hate towards his father. Now, was Tariq like on some bullshit? Yeah, he was. But what ended up happening was when I don't want to give away anything. I was about to give some shit away. So, but once his father was no more, um, Tasha, Tasha and the father were constantly fighting, because he was like, I don't want him in that life. I don't want him in that life. And then Tariq started doing things, and so, but I would have to say that both the parents, neither one of them were really doing truly doing right by their children, because everything was still rooted in their ego. It was still rooted in the glorification of their ego. They couldn't see past still their own selfish desires and needs that they wanted for themselves. So, excuse me. So what ended up happening was Tasha ends up basically perpetuating it and teaching her son the game. So basically helping to create that monster. And I always talk about, when we talk about men being psychotic and the serial killers and all that stuff, most serial killers we know are men. However, there's a gene called the MAO gene that is passed on only from the mother. From the mitochondria DNA is passed on to her son. That gene is what they would coin the serial killer gene. And you only get it from the mother. So women have to really take that power that they have. They have to take it seriously. With great power comes great responsibility. You can talk about all day long how powerful you are as the feminine, you're this and you're that in the womb and blah, 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 all this stuff. But you got to take responsibility for that monster that you birth. And this is what women don't want to do. They don't want to take their responsibility for these sons that are out here participating in degenerate behavior. You birthed him, ma'am. He's your son. You got to take fucking responsibility for that. Now, if you've done everything that you can, you've supported him and whatever his interests are, and you supported him in that, as far as like whatever things he's interested in life, and goals and stuff that he has, and you're instilling these values and you're doing all of the things right, and he still chooses to go out and be a degenerate, the one thing you can't do is perpetuate that shit. You cannot perpetuate it. You cannot you cannot be complicit in that kind of behavior. You just can't. And this is where Tasha messed up. Tariq actually should have dealt with the consequences of what he did, regardless of the reason why he did it. The reason why he did it, I'm with it. I'm all with that. Absolutely. But there still should have been consequences. And Tasha got in the way of that. And this is what women do. They get in the way of their sons facing the consequences for their behavior. So when I talk about the dark matriarchy, that's an example of what I'm talking about. When you have, as a woman, when you birth your sons and your daughters, because your daughters are a reflection of you. This is why these women hate their daughters, because their daughters are their truth. Their daughters are the fragments of what she didn't do with her life. She's showing you that just by existing. All of our daughters are like mini me's, right? Because we birthed them. And when we look at our daughters, we see ourselves. And women don't like that. So whatever thing is irritating you about your daughter, you're jealous of your daughter, that is all you. That is all your shadow. You are projecting all of that onto your daughter. I told my mom to stop waiting on a man. Yeah. And she, yep. Someone said, yeah, daughters are copy and paste. Yeah, I mean, but they are our mini me's. And they're here to show us that this is what you need to do. I always say that our children in general, even whether you have a son or a daughter, our children are fragments of our shadows. She waited a man to leave. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. And women do that. They will wait on a man to do everything. But that to me, that goes back to what I always talk about when I say that man that's hiding in the back of your subconscious mind. The prince or the knight or whatever you was dreaming, you have been fantasizing about ever since you were a little girl. That's who women are waiting on to do stuff. They want to travel. They want to wait on them to travel. They want to wait on them to do all of these things. They're waiting on that dude, right? So that dark feminine mind, that's what we saw in Tasha. That's what we're seeing in Monet, in Power 2, in Ghost, the way she is with her son, her oldest son Kane, the monster that we see that he is. And it's like, you created the monster and now you want to kick the monster out the house. And that was just another flip side of it. So Tasha saw the monster that her son was becoming, and she took it and nurtured it. Right. So in a way, I guess in a way, she did kind of nurture it to keep him from just going out here completely wilding out. So because he does have his father in him, I actually think that that's what keeps him from just being completely just gone. Right. Because if it was just Tasha, who knows? So, but then you have Monet in Power Book 2 and her son Kane. And Kane is sort of like a hothead, right? But as you watch the series as it goes on, you can see, okay, Kane is no dummy, right? But he is kind of hot-headed. But you start to see in the series how he kind of chills that out a little bit, right? But we look at how she is with her sons and how she is with her daughter. She don't like her daughter. Now, she's putting her daughter on game, and that's cool because the whole family, now the difference between their family, the Tejadas and the St. Patrick's, is that their children are fully aware. Their children are born and bred into the game. They know what this is about. So there's no secrets here, right? But you can tell the relationship between Monet and her daughter Diana is very, it borderlines very toxic. It actually becomes toxic. And I was like, that's because that's the daughter. That's the truth right there, looking at you every single day. Your daughter is your truth looking at you every day. You are looking at what you could have been. You are looking at what you want her to be. You're looking at how jealous you are of her because maybe she's more beautiful than you were at that age, or maybe she, whatever she got going on. Yes. So, she's your truth. And so the daughters are slick too. Yeah. Oh, the feminine, honey. We always talk about how slick men are. Women, look, what did Tupac say? Men got their game from a woman. Women put their sons on game. This is what they're doing in the series. Tasha is teaching her son the game. That's Mason. That's Mason. That's Masonic code. Monet is teaching her sons and her daughter the game, right? And then when we see Raising Canaan, Rock did the same thing. She taught her son the game. This is what women do. This is masonry. This is the Masonic code. This is the Masonic secret that we're always hearing about. Mothers putting their son on game, teaching them the game, teaching them how to manipulate other women. See, that's the problem right there. That's the dark feminine. That's the shadow feminine. Why are you teaching him how to run game and be manipulative towards women? Why aren't you teaching him the game so he can go out and run shit? Right? So he can be the head of the male hierarchy, so he can dominate men in the marketplace. But no, they're teaching their sons to go manipulate women. You hear these stories about these mothers, how they actually are complicit in their sons' sex trafficking. Why are you doing that? Because, see, that's the shadow feminine. And also part of the shadow feminine is the self-hatred that women naturally have. This is why women have to do work on themselves. It's so imperative that you do work on yourself as a woman, because you're already given a certain hand to play when you come here. And even if you come born into a wealthy family, you're still dealt a certain hand. And you have to know this. The difference between women who are just kind of born like in average homes or, whatever, and as opposed to a woman who's born into a powerful, wealthy family, she's around it, right? She's groomed, right? But then a lot of times what'll happen in those types of families, they'll groom the sons and put the sons in all of these things, and the women are just kind of just standing on the sidelines and just watching how this thing plays out. Those type of women, yeah, they know how to get a husband. They know how to snag a husband who's, wealthy and powerful and stuff like that. Like, they know how to do that. But as far as like really truly getting in and running shit and coming from a powerful position and standing 10 toes down, a lot of the women in those families aren't getting that. It's always given to the men. And it goes right back to this whole European male hierarchy stuff, right? Um, I lost my thought because I got a text. But yeah, that comes from that whole thing with, when we see like the European royal families, it's always about the male heir, the male heir. They realize I was being manipulated by my mother to like, yep, and this is a game she's playing. Yep, that's what they do. My mom is in her 80s and she still be trying to play these little games. And I just be like, lady, please. Um yeah, so we get that from that whole European male mindset where it's all about the male heir, right? And so that's what we see when we see, like, we hear about these families, these wealthy, powerful families, and all of the men are at the head and, that kind of stuff. So, but, every once in a while you will have those fathers who like, no, I'm going to teach my daughter, I'm going to teach my son and my daughter, both of them. I want my daughter to be just as calculating and whatever, all of the things that we say that men are. I want my daughter to be that just like my son, because they got to run this shit, right? So, but when we get into, going back to that dark feminine, and the way we operate and how we are with our sons and our daughters, right? Um, it's such a it's such a stark difference in the way we treat them. And I was very much aware of that before I had my children. I had some idea. I already knew. I didn't have the knowledge that I have at this point, because life and experience and all of that stuff. But I was already very aware of the relationship between black women and their sons, and the relationship they have with their daughters. And I saw it firsthand. Like, I saw it. Like, I saw how my best friend growing up, how her mother treated her, as opposed to how she treated her son. And she pretty much dogged my friend out. Like, I mean, the relationship between them is like extremely toxic. But the relationship between her and the son's toxic. However, she still did that raise my daughter, love my son bullshit. So the daughter, my best friend, she moved out. She got married. She did her own thing. She had her own business. She was doing her thing. The son was still literally at home with them, I think, with the mom, until, I don't know, probably a few years ago. And this nigga's in his 30s. So there's a stark difference. And I saw that. And I took note of that shit. And I even saw it in my own family. I saw how, I saw how my uncles were treated by my mom and my aunts and all them. Like, now all of my aunts, pretty much my mom, very independent women. Like, my grandfather was very progressive back in those, like, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And he, with my mom and my aunts, he was very much telling them to, hey, Shandira, he was very much instilling in them the value of being independent and not depending on a man. Always have your own, always have a job, pay your bills on time, have good credit. These are the things that my grandfather instilled in my mom and my aunts. But there were still some things missing. So I saw how they were with my uncles. Like, they were always belling them out. And these grown men, and they would always be belling them out. And I saw that. I took note of these things. And I knew that that's not what I wanted to do. So I had already said way before, I was like, when I have a daughter, I'm not going to treat her like this, like how I see her being treated. I'm not going to be her best friend. We're not doing that. But I'm going to be very aware of how I treat her and how I treat my son, if I do have one, because I know that the way you raise a girl is not the same way you raise a boy. Okay. But I already had some idea of the insecurities and the things that little girls go through early on. Like, I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was reading this article. I think it was in Essence magazine, and they were talking about how, as little girls, how our boundaries are violated very, very young, right? And one of my best friends going out at the age of 18, her mother after paid rent, and she ended up moving out because her stepdaughter. Yeah, yep, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I remember reading that, and one of the examples that they used, as far as little girls' boundaries being violated very young, is when you are forced to embrace grown ass men in your family, like your uncles or whatever. And and we know that a lot of times when little girls are molested, um, or violated sexually, is usually by a member of the family. So I remember it in my head. Like I said, I was pregnant for my daughter, and I was like, I am not going to force my daughter to have to go hug her uncles and all. And not saying that my uncles are pervy, but I just remember how I felt as a little girl. It was like, go hug your uncle, go hug your. And I always felt sort of like I didn't want to do it. And like I said, it wasn't because of them being pervy, because they're not. But it's like, those are your boundaries, and we're taught early on as little girls to ignore that shit. Right? And one of the ways that we're taught to ignore it is to being forced to embrace grown ass men as little girls. So I remember I was like, I am not forcing my daughter to do that, because I know how I felt when I was forced to do it. I don't make my daughter tell her dad she loves him back. She can receive without giving him anything. Yeah, because, and even if she is going to say that to him verbally, it has to be something that she wants to do, not something that's forced. I love that. Um, so yeah, so I remember thinking I'm not gonna do that. All my uncles were creeps. Yeah, my uncles, I mean, like, they weren't pervy like that, not like pedophiles or anything, but I mean, they just had some shit with them, like most men do, like, because most of them don't do the work on themselves. Like I said, men have a beast inside of them. They have an untamed beast. Shows up and manifests in different ways. It doesn't always have to be with violence, and excuse me, it can show up in different ways. But they all got it, and then most of them ain't doing the work. And then my uncle was a preacher, so you know how that go. That's a whole other. Mm. But anyway, yeah. So I remember that. I remember thinking I'm not going to do that to her because I knew how I felt. And that's where it begins. And I think that that's probably like one of the first things that hide in your shadow as a little girl is when your boundaries are violated when you're like 8 or 9 years old, right? And you know how that made you feel, but you know how your family was, so you just took it and you just pushed it away. Just push it away, and that shadow is growing. It's just growing, and it's just you're just adding more stuff to it, just more stuff, right? And because we learn how to be silent as little girls, like we learn how to be silent. We know how to be quiet. If you go to a strip club, you can see the lesson, right? And we learn how to be silent as little girls, right? We see certain things, we experience certain things, but we're quiet, and it hides, right? And and then it starts to show up in how the way we operate in the world. And I think that that's the reason why a lot of women, um, I think that's why a lot of women don't want to get into, like, how can I put it? Like, I'll talk about certain things and they'll just, like, I know that women are watching. I know that. Like, I know they're watching. I know but they're just like, I'm just going to be quiet. And there's nothing wrong with being silent. That is a strategy. If you're intentional, you're going to be silent because strategy. I'm withholding certain information because it's not time to reveal it yet. That's different. It's different from just learning as a little girl to be quiet while things are happening to you, while someone's harming you, or while you're witnessing something, but you're not supposed to say anything, right? That's different. And all of those things hide in your shadow. So as we get older, and then you got the whole phallus worship thing going on, because we learn that early on as little girls, right? We learn that early on in middle school, high school. We worship, we worship these men, or these boys that we like. And where I was so quick to be like on some pick me shit, and and all of that. All of that hides in your shadow, right? And so when you get called out on it, then it's like when you call women out on that, they get so defensive, and it's so triggering for them. And it's like the only reason why you're so triggered, and you're so on the defense, is because what I said is true, because you haven't done that work. You haven't, as I always say, you did not dive the abyss. And so by you not doing that, these things are going to show up. You're going to get triggered by things. You're going to, it's going to show up in how you deal with men, and in other relationships in general. All of that, everything is starts with your shadow. I mean, that's the root of everything, because you start to learn how to hide things in that shadow early on. Personally, I think your shadow shows up immediately. Like, I think, now this may be a little out of the box, but Rain told me she didn't show skin because we aren't safe. Yeah, told me she. Yeah, Okay, two things. I don't want to lose my thought. One, I wanted to talk about that. But I think one of the ways that shadow first shows up is after birth, y'all, like the trauma of being born and all of that shit that happens to you as a newborn baby coming out your mother's womb. It's very traumatizing. That's your first trauma, being born. I think that's where your shadow first start. That's where your shadow is born, when you're born. Um, One friend told me, yeah, yeah, and it's funny you said that because that was the reason why. This is crazy. That was the reason why I stopped wearing red. So for me, it wasn't the skin thing, it was wearing red, because every time I wore the color red, I would get attention, unwanted attention from men. And it was just happening way too much. I stopped wearing it. Is that wild? I mean, I wear it now, because I'm this grown ass crone, whatever, right? Like, but yeah, like I used to get so much unwanted attention from men every time I wore the color red, and so I stopped doing it. Um, so, but yeah, that shadow, I think it's formed when you're born, and I think that it's interesting because I always talk about how this system is inverted. I always talk about how patriarchy is really just an inverted matriarchy. And so if it's inverted, now we're talking about underneath, right? The feminine energy represents the underworld. This is why I say women are dark in general. The feminine is dark first. That's why when I hear people talking about they light workers, I'm like, what the fuck is a light worker as a woman? You're dark. You're feminine, you're dark, period. The feminine energy is vicious. What are you talking about, light worker? Now, I'm all for, I talk about all the time, shadow integration, right? But it's about learning how to carry that like I carry that all the time. I understand that my energy is of the dark feminine. That's just who I am. I carry that with me all the time. I'm not a light worker. Now, am I do I show common decency and respect and courtesy towards other humans? Yes, I'm not an asshole, but I'm not I'm not a light worker. I just work, right? But I understand that my energy is what it is. And it is of the dark feminine, right? And so that's just who I am, and that's what I carry, that's what I walk in. That's just me, right? Um and I mean, it's just so funny. People tell me all the time. I remember I was in a Botanica, and I was looking. I was actually just kind of browsing. I was in there with my daughter because she wanted to go in there. It was mainly her wanting to go that day. I was just like, okay. Don't get me wrong, I love the Botanica, but I was just kind of like, eh. So anyway, we just went in there, and one of the women that worked in there, of course, she came over and asked us if we need anything. I was like, oh no, we're just browsing. I think my daughter wanted to go in and get some crystals or something. And so I was like, well, you know what? I need some more incense. So I was like, all right, let's do it. So yeah, but anyway, she was like, do you need anything? And I said, no, we're just browsing. And so I just happened to come where they had some of the things for Santa Muerta. Um, oh, we have another visitor, Peach. Hey, Peach. So yeah, so because I hadn't, well, I gotta set everything back up again, but I have an altar devoted to Santa Muerta. I am a devotee of that energy. I work with Santa Muerta, right? But so I had an altar, and so I just happened to come across, there was a few things that they had over there for her, and so I was just kind of looking at it. And so the woman comes over and she was like, "Are you but it was like the way she asked me, it was like she like picked up on it, because she said you work with the darker aspect of Santa Muerta." And I was like, hmm. I said, yeah. She's like, yeah, I could tell. So I thought that was interesting. So, all of that to say that I understand the feminine energy, and I understand the darkness of the feminine, that shadow feminine. That's where the power is, that's where the wisdom is. But that is also where things hide. Like I talked about the trauma and things like that. All of those things are hiding in your shadow. And this is why you're supposed to take all of that and you're supposed to transmute that energy. Right? You have to become the alchemist. So these things that are hiding in our shadows, when we talk about traumas and things like that, we're supposed to take that energy and become the alchemist. We're supposed to transmute that, right? Not just stay in it. We got to get past the healing. I'm healing. This is my healing era. No, it's time to exert power. It's time to transmute that energy. I'm scared of my shadow, but I'm getting acquainted with. You have to, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and it's interesting you said that, because so then you have to ask yourself, why are you afraid of it? So that's something to have to think about. I'm not saying, just you in general. I'm not saying just you, Tiara. I'm saying just in general, because when you said that, it made me think, that's something that you have to ask yourself, like, why would you be afraid of it? And that's a part of the work, right? The part of the work is, okay, well, why? What happened? You know, I think for me, I've always been sort of in tune with that shadow aspect of myself, even when I was younger. Um, there was a part of me that was a little bit afraid of certain aspects of it, and that was just because I grew up in a very Christian family. So I'm thirsty, y'all. I grew up in a very Christian family, um, so there were certain energies that I knew that were, I guess, around me, or is that the word I want to use? I guess. And sometimes I would be sort of afraid of it because I was so young and I didn't know, what that was. And because I knew, but that something in me knew that, okay, this is against how I'm being raised and what I'm being taught. I go to church every Sunday, and this is my family and they're very much in the church, right? So I knew that having seen those things is like I would see things, you know. Um, or I would have this recurring dream of this being in a dark cloak. Can't see the face, but they just had this dark cloak. And I would have this recurring dream of this being when I was little. And a lot of times they would be chasing me around my uncle's church. That was always so, just so odd. Like when I was growing up, and it was just it was kind of scary, right? Um, so I think that my shadow has always been, I would say, pronounced. I guess it's just always sort of been there. Um, so it wasn't hard for me to sort of like really tap into that. Like I've always been, like when you start getting into the occult and witchcraft and stuff like that, like I've always been attracted to that, even as a child. Like I used to love anything that had to do with witchcraft or anything like that. I would watch it. It was just something that just always drew me. I was always pulled to it, and I know that that is the aspect of the dark feminine. The dark feminine, she is the witch, right? That's who she is, and so. Oh yeah, powerful. Oh okay, yeah, yeah, scared of being casted out. Yeah, that's that whole thing, right? So being casted out, that's like the Scarlet Letter, Salem witch trials. There's always that lingering thing as a woman. And because you are, like I said, you are the witch, right? That's who we are. Like like I said, the feminine is dark, period. I don't care about all, people can say light worker all they want to. That's fine. I don't buy into that bullshit, because just the fact that you are a woman And if you are practicing witchcraft, that is dark. It's dark because we're when we're talking about manipulating energies and doing all of things, where's that coming from? That's the unknown. The unknown is always dark because you can't see it. You can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't touch it, you can't taste it. It's dark and it's unknown, it's untangible, right? So how are you a light worker? Fuck out of here with that. Um, so yeah, so that dark feminine, the dark matriarchy. We, like I said, we see that really being played out in the show. We really see it being played out in Raising Canaan, the dark matriarchy, because his mother, Rock, she is that girl. I mean, she got dudes afraid of her. But honestly, she is a very, very good example of what black women used to be and what we still are. It's just that we're so afraid because we think that we're supposed to be the submissive, um you know, following the man, arcanes, and and the black man is God, and the black man is public enemy number one, and we got to be there for them, and we all this rhetoric, right? But Rock in Raising Canaan, that's a black woman, y'all. Now, the circumstances and all of the things and stuff and all that, right? Yeah, we get all that. But the energy that she is on, the energy that she projects, that is a black woman. Truly. I would venture to say, and I haven't even started Raising Canaan yet, y'all. I've just been watching reels and studying characters. I've been in the fandom, like just going down the rabbit hole. And I would venture to say that she is like that energy of that character is like what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what I'm looking for. I guess I'll just say the root. Um, when you take a woman like that, the root, I think that's the root and the core essence of a woman, specifically a black woman. When we get into seeing Bay's work, I'm talking about him all the time. We talk about the melanated, kinky haired woman is the widow, right? And Rock is a widow. I think the father is dead or something. I don't know everything about it yet, but it's ma and son. And or with a lot of the men who study more science and masonry, they have an understanding that they are the widow's son. That's it. The melanated kinky hair woman is the widow, period. This is why I think black women have a hard time sustaining relationships with black men, because you ain't supposed to be doing that shit. Black women are the stewards of the earth. It begins and ends with us. So us trying to be in these marriages and these relationships and doing that whole nuclear, that's all bullshit. That's not who we are. That's why we can't make that shit work. And black men want us to be something that we're not. I'm not your mama, right? I'm not getting ready to hold it down for you while you out there doing dumb shit. I'm not doing all that because that's not who I am. I'm not supposed to be in this. I'm supposed to be free. I have greater and bigger things to do. Now, if you want to go get you a woman of another race, then that's different. And I think that works. Actually, I don't get mad when I see black men with women of other nationalities. It doesn't bother me at all. Like, I have zero fucks about that. I really do give zero fucks about it. Like, I don't care. Because to me, it's like, that's good. I think you found your counterpart. A lot of people don't like that, right? Because we are in this, oh, the black man and the black woman are supposed to be together. Okay, I mean, that's all fine and great and it's cute. I mean, hey, if you find you a quality black man and he is that dude, then do your thing. But I just think that for black women are always going to have a hard time sustaining, relationships with black men because you're not supposed to be doing that shit. So you have bigger and better things to do. I think that having it's one thing to be locked into the ownership of marriage. It's another thing to enjoy a man. I think it's better to enjoy him, experience him, but you don't want to be locked down. Excuse me, because humans like to use love. They weaponize love to get you. No, this love is freedom. Love does not mean me being locked down with you for the next 25 years of my life. I'm not waiting on that great life. Right. But love is freedom. It's not, nobody owns you. You're not beholden to anyone, right? I think that women have been duped so much so that they don't even know who the fuck they are. And they really think that in order to be complete in life, they have to be attached to a man. And I don't care how much talk women talk about, yeah, matriarchy and women need to empower themselves and we need to blah 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 do this and do that. No matter how much, the other one, we need to decenter men. No matter how much women are talking all that, all it takes is one man. And that bitch will be ready to be married. She'll be ready to push out some babies. She won't be talking about that decentering male shit no more. All that shit will go out the window. So, and the reason for that is because you didn't do the work. You could get on here all day long and watch content all day long and get hyped up so you can go be so you can go decenter men and do all this stuff. But if you ain't done the work, that friend waiting for a husband, child. Oh my God. If you ain't done the work, you ain't dealt with that ugliness inside of you, that shadow, you haven't confronted her, you haven't rid yourself of that dude you've been fantasizing about that hangs out in the back of your subconscious mind and he been there since you was like 10 playing with your Barbies. If you ain't dealt with that shit, everything you saying is bullshit. Gotta do the work. Period. Hold on real quick, y'all. Don't go nowhere because I need to put something in the chat real quick. Hold on. Oh, here we go. So I was working on let me put it here. So I'm always talking about women, the emotional aspect of which is also part of the that shadow feminine is dealing with that emotion because that's energy and motion. So you know how they love to say women are too emotional. Women are too emotional. We are emotional, right? But our emotions, when we know how to express them, when we have that emotional intelligence and we know if we can decide whether we're going to give something an emotional response or not. This is where women mess up. They don't think about that. They're just emotional. I know for me, I will decide if I'm going to give this a response. Is this worth an emotional response right now? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I get worked up, and especially when it comes to my son, because he has autism, as I've told you guys several times. So he can definitely get to me sometimes. But you have to be, everything has to be strategic. everything you do has to be strategic for the most part, especially as a woman operating in this realm, right? Like I said, women are pawns on the chessboard and don't even know it. So we have to be very strategic in how we move. We have to be very strategic in how we express our emotions. Your emotions, those deep parts of yourself, that's not for everybody, right? And if you do have a lover and you want to express those things with him, or if you have, someone else that you're really close to, you have a sister, or whatever, it's certain people who you decide is going to have access to those parts of yourself. But that's not for everybody. It's not for social media, right? Women will get into the comment sections and they will just throw up like, ma'am, we didn't ask you for all that. I know you triggered. You need to go work through that. Right? So I have this PDF here. It's just a quick strategy checklist for women, and it's something that you can just go back to, when needed. And if you want, you could think of some things yourself and add to it. But the only thing is, it is a PDF, so it's not like you can go in and write stuff down. But just it'll just if you're reading through it, sometimes it'll make you think of some things, or even if you're in a situation, um, and you can sort of like reflect, go look back at it and just kind of reflect on, oh, okay, this will be a good strategy for this situation, like that. So I'm posting it here. And the great thing about this, though, is that it has an audio along with it. So the audio is basically breaking down a little bit more each strategy. So it's good stuff. It's free, so y'all can just go on and get it. But it's called a strategy women's strategies checklist. I don't have a separate link for it, so you will just have to go to my stand store, but you'll see it. So if you want to go over there and check it out, let's see. Let me see if I can put like a picture of it, but I don't think I can. Let's see. Yeah, it's not letting me put a picture in here, but it's good stuff. It's like I said, it's just a quick audio. Well, it's a list and an audio, and like I said, it's something you can reflect on. And like I said, the audio just kind of breaks it down a little bit more. So yeah, so when you get a chance, you go ahead and check it out. But yeah, so getting into the dark feminine, that shadow feminine, and really doing the work, and and being okay with embracing those aspects of yourself, because that's another thing too. Um, we have been so conditioned into the thinking of, we're supposed to be um, a specific way. Here, we talk about that good girl thing, which is that's some more bullshit. That good girl persona is what keeps you locked in daughtership. And it's also the good girl thing, the self-righteousness, all that shit is performative, right? Women perform a lot. And when you decide to get down in there and do that work, that's when all the performances, it has to come to a stop. Because now you have to get comfortable with being who and what you are. So diving into that shadow, or diving into the abyss, is the foundation of all of the other work that you're going to do after that. That's the foundation, because like I said, everything hides in your shadow. You can't escape it. And again, it's not the same as healing, right? I'm so tired of hearing about that, y'all. Everybody's healing. Like, get to work. So, yeah, so like I said, I mean, everything is rooted in that shadow. So that good girl persona, that's just another mask for women to hide behind, so they don't have to be exposed. You wouldn't be worried about being exposed, though, if you did the work. If I know for me, I had to accept the fact that I've always been stoic, right? I've never been like I've always been stoic. And it I remember it's like, I was told that, you got to be, not gonna lie, I felt worse every time I heal. Right. That's what I'm saying. Like that I'm healing stuff is like, all right, y'all, that was fine for like what, COVID 2020, 21, 22 or whatever, but come on, let's move on past that shit, right? Um yeah, so I had to accept the fact that, like I said, I've always been stoic. I'm very much I, I know what to allow. Like I said, I decide what's going to get an emotional response out of me. That is emotional intelligence. People talk about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is when you decide what you're going to give your emotions to. That's emotional intelligence, right? Intelligence, intellect, right? So you're like, well, wait a second. Is this deserving of an emotional response? Right? So this is why I noticed with me, and like I said, being stoic. And another thing I had to accept was that I was never one to I was never one to be sad when somebody died. And I used to force myself to be sad and have all these emotions, right? Because everybody would be in that space. And so I used to have to force myself to feel that way. But honestly, and it's not that I didn't care. It's just that I'm not going to be like, oh, all this stuff. That's just not me. And it was like, I fought that for so long, but I was like, okay, I got to accept that this is who I am. Like, you're just not going to get this. I remember this was like long time ago when I think it was was it my daughter? No, my son. This is before all the drama that became my marriage and all that. But I remember my son was like an infant and I was still breastfeeding him at this time. And I was in the bed, I was asleep. Now, I had been so sleep deprived, so I was finally in a really good sleep. And the mister, that's what I call him, um, he came in the room and he woke me up and he said that he was having these chest pains. He's like, I'm having these chest pains, but I took some MSM and I got to drink some water, and it might just be dehydration, but I just need to tell you, I'm having these chest pains. I don't know. And so I'm just looking at him. I'm just like, okay. Like, I honestly, y'all, like, I was like, well, what do people normally do in these types of situations? They get on, oh my God, are you okay? Let me get you. Let me do it. Right? And I was just like, okay. I was like, well, how do you feel right now? Well, he was like, well, I think I'm getting better. I'm starting to feel. I just wanted to come and let you know. And I was just like, oh, okay. I was like, I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want me to do. Now, if you like come in there and like hold your left shoulder, telling me you having a heart attack, then of course I'm gonna get out the bed and I'm gonna call 911, right? But if you come in there and you're able to talk to me and tell me what you actually did already, then I was just like, okay. Just very stoic, y'all, like no emotions. And I remember he said to me like a few days later, he was like, dang, he was like, you just was like, he's like, there was no, I was like, well, you wasn't having a heart attack. Like, what was you wasn't having a stroke. Like, I don't know what you wanted me to do. Did you want me to jump up out of the bed and start being all frazzled? Like, who's doing that? That's shit you see in the movies. Like, I'm not doing all that. You told me you were fine. You said you drank the water, you took the MSM. You could tell that you were starting to feel a little bit better. So it's like, what you want me to do? Outside of me getting up, calling 911, or getting in the car and me driving you to emergency or whatever, like, I don't know what else you are expecting me to do. And so once I realized that about myself, y'all, and it's like, I really, why was I gonna stress out? Because if I'm gonna start stressing out, then my son, because at this time, like I said, he was an infant, so his bed was in the room with me, right? So if I'm stressing out, then what? Do I wake the children up? Do I go get my son out the crib? It's like, what we doing? So I think about all of these things. And so that is an example of emotional intelligence, because I was thinking about all of this as he's telling me what's going on. I'm in my mind thinking, okay, what's next? What do I need to do? Is he having a heart attack? What's going on here? What do I need to do? If we got to go to the emergency, I got to wake the kids up. I got to, these are all the things I'm thinking about. So I'm sorry if I can't be like, oh my God, what, no, I have to think. I have to think. I don't have time to get so worked up about it, especially when you're telling me you're literally giving me a checklist of everything that you've done already, and you're starting to feel a little bit better. So there's no need for anything else from me outside of if I have to call 911 or if I got to drive you to emergency, right? So I decided that, okay, that's me. That's who I am. I'm not this, oh my God, I don't wear my emotions on my sleeve. So that day, and when he brought it up to me, I immediately did the thing what most women do. I wanted to apologize. But I stopped myself because I'm like, why am I apologizing? This is just who I am. I'm not apologizing for being who I am. I'm not one of these overly emotional women. That's not me. You're not going to get that from me. You're just not. Right? Now, if something is happening with my children, that's different. And even then, I'm still going to be like, wait a second. Like, my daughter recently, she was like, she kept telling me she can't hear. I can't hear. What's going on with my ear? Children are going to be all frantic about stuff like that, right? I said, Amira, oh, shoot, I done gave y'all my daughter's name. I do not like doing that. Forget I said that. Let me do what's that Men in Black thing where they do the mind eraser thing? But anyway, I said, okay, when did this start? Well, I felt it a few days ago, but I was doing this, and I made myself yawn and blah blah blah, and it popped, and I said, okay. And I said, okay, so I said, what's happening is you probably have wax buildup in your ear. And she was like, well, I don't want to wait until Monday. But I said, well, what I would have to do is make an appointment. But if it's that bad, we can just go to urgent care. And she's like, well, let's go to urgent care. So we did all that, right? And it was funny because she told her dad, she was like, I'm going to urgent care. Oh, Bobby said, I think I have wax buildup in my ear. But they having this whole conversation about it. And I'm just like, can we go? Like, what we doing? And so and then he wants to start asking me, did I do all these home remedies? And I said, look, I ain't done none of that. I don't play when it comes to the ear. We just getting ready to go to the doggone urgent care so they can drain the wax, because I'm pretty sure that that's what it is. Because I had that a long time ago, so I know what that feels like. And of course, we get to urgent care, and that's exactly what it is. And they just did their little thing and drained the wax out her ear, and that was it. But it was just all of the things that was going on before all of that. All of the, because even my daughter was like, well, you didn't just, I said, what, I didn't get all worked up over? She was like, no. I said, what was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to get worked up over? It's just wax buildup. Like, what do y'all want from me? So Look, y'all, I'm just saying all this to say that women, we have to be very, very cognizant. And we have to, when we talk about emotional intelligence, we have to really understand what that means. It is knowing when and what you're going to give your emotions to. Does this deserve an emotional response from me? Let me think about that, right? And how does this make me feel right now? Do I feel triggered? Do I feel like what's going on? What's going on with the feels, right? Women have to be very, very, and in order for you to be there, you have to be very rooted in who you are. You got to be rooted. You got to be foundational in who and what you are. And you can't do that if you're spending all your time up in the ethers. Right? And this is what the work does. And like I said before, I've actually upgraded my work. We are now heading into the actual dark feminine activation code. And there's 4 levels to it, the framework. It's decode, dismantle, anchor, and then activate. Those are the 4, that's the framework. Those are the 4 levels or the codes, right? That we get into in that dark feminine activation code. And one of the things is learning the art of a detachment and learning how to really, really be emotionally intelligent. Knowing when you're going to be emotional. That's wild though. What do you mean knowing when to be emotional? Yeah, that is having control and being very rooted in who you are. That is self-awareness, like a motherfucker, right? Anyway, ladies, I gotta go because I need to charge my phone. I should have been charging it while I was on here, but it gets really hot. So I'm gonna have to log out of here. Um, Go to my link, get your checklist along with the audio guide, breaking down the checklist. So it's free, something you can just keep and just have, refer back to when you need to, or whatever. Pass it on to someone, right? Um, and so yeah, and if you're interested in the Dark Feminine Activation Code link, you can actually find it on that link as well. Because like I said, the link for the strategies checklist, I don't have a separate link for that. For some reason, StanStore doesn't give me a separate link for that. But if you go on there, you'll see it. So it's not hard to find. It's not like you got to go through all these 10, 20 offers before you get to it. It's like right there. So I think it's like number 2, the second thing on there. So you'll see it. Just go in there, you'll see it. And if you want to get into the Dark Feminine Activation Code, I know I have 2 former clients on here already, but whoever else is here, because I can't see right now, whoever else is here, if you want to get into that, you can actually, like I said, the link is here, link in my bio. Also, you can also book your free discovery call so we can see where you are on your journey to even see if the 4-week container is right for you. So that's about it. I hope you ladies enjoyed this. I had some fun. Remember, with that emotional intelligence, it's about what you decide to give your emotions to. So, um, I think that's it. So I'll see you ladies next week when I go live again. All right, y'all. Deuces.